The cold wind whipped against my face as I stood at the grave site, but I barely felt it. The weight of grief pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. My father, the man who had raised me with unwavering love and strength, was gone. The priest's voice was just background noise as I watched the casket lower into the earth. This was it, the final goodbye. Beside me, my older brother Mark stood stiff, his hands clenched into fists. He wasn't mourning. Not really. His face was unreadable, but I knew him too well to be fooled. His silence wasn't grief, it was calculation. I should have expected what came next. As soon as the ceremony ended, before the guests had even dispersed, Mark grabbed my wrist and pulled me aside. His grip was tight, his voice low but insistent. "Lisa, let's talk." I sighed, already knowing where this was headed. "Not here, Mark," I murmured, glancing around at the grieving relatives. But Mark didn't care about tact. He never did. "Give me my half of the inheritance, now." I turned to face him fully, my stomach twisting. My father had left me everything, our childhood home, his savings, and the majority of his estate, including the $5 million he had spent a lifetime building. It wasn't favoritism. It was protection. Dad knew Mark. He knew his recklessness, his inability to hold on to money. He had seen Mark burn through his own savings. He had seen him squander the inheritance Mom left us years ago. And he knew if Mark got a cent of this fortune, it would be gone in months. "I don't think this is the time or place," I said, my voice steady, even as my heart pounded. Mark scoffed, shaking his head. "Cut the crap, Lisa. I know Dad left you everything. But we're family. That money's just sitting there, and I deserve my share." I took a slow breath, willing myself to stay calm. "Dad made his decision, Mark. It wasn't mine to make." His expression darkened, his lips twisting into a sneer. "You think you deserve all of it? You were always Dad's little favorite, weren't you?" I swallowed hard. The accusation stung, but I refused to let it show. This isn't about favorites. It's about responsibility. Dad knew. Mark cut me off with a bitter laugh. "Dad knew what? That I needed it more than you? That you'd hoard it while I struggle?" I clenched my fists. "You don't struggle, Mark. You waste. You've always wasted." That did it. His face turned red, his fists tightening at his sides. "You'll regret this," he spat before storming off. I watched him go, my chest tight, my father's final words echoing in my mind. "Don't trust him with money, Lisa. He'll destroy himself with it." I hadn't even had time to mourn before greed reared its ugly head. 2 weeks later, I was finally starting to breathe again. The funeral was behind me, and I had done everything my father asked, settling his affairs, ensuring the house remained intact, and trying to move forward. I needed a break. So I booked a short trip to Spain, a chance to escape, to process everything without the constant weight of death and paperwork pressing down on me. For the first few days, I let myself feel again. I wandered the streets of Barcelona, sipped wine by the beach, and allowed myself to grieve without distraction. Then, on the 4th day, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it absent-mindedly, expecting a simple notification. Maybe a message from a friend. But when I saw Mark's name on the screen, my stomach dropped. I hesitated before opening the text, dread curling in my gut. Then I read it. "I've taken our parents home. All their belongings. It's mine now. Already changed the locks." I blinked, rereading it twice. Then, before I could stop myself, I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound in the middle of a quiet cafe. Mark. Oh, Mark, he really thought he could just waltz into my father's house, claim it as his own, and that would be the end of it? Did he really believe that changing the locks somehow erased legal ownership? I took a slow sip of my wine and exhaled. This was so typical of him. Impulsive, reckless, and utterly convinced he could bulldoze his way through life without consequences. I set my glass down, my fingers tightening around my phone as I started typing a response. "That's cute, Mark. Let me know how that works out for you." I pressed send and leaned back in my chair, a smirk tugging at my lips. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Because the reality was, Mark had just made the biggest mistake of his life, and he had no idea what was coming next. Mark had made a critical mistake. He thought that by changing the locks, he could rewrite reality. That by claiming our parents' house as his own, it would somehow make it true. But what he didn't know, what he had so foolishly overlooked, was that legally, nothing had changed. The house was still mine, the estate was still in my name. My father had made sure of that. So while Mark thought he had won, all he had really done was set himself up for disaster. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. I booked the first flight home. By the time I landed, my exhaustion was overshadowed by something stronger, determination. I had no interest in a drawn-out battle, no messy court fights, no back-and-forth arguments. I wanted this handled. So I made my first call. "Lisa," my lawyer, Mr. Holloway, greeted me, his voice professional yet warm. "I assume this is about your brother." I sighed, rubbing my temple. "You assume correctly. We received an alert on the home's security system a few days ago," he continued. "Unauthorized entry. We were waiting for you to return before taking action." My father had been meticulous about everything. His will, the estate, the security. He had foreseen exactly this kind of situation and prepared for it, which meant Mark hadn't taken anything. He had broken into my house. "I want this handled fast," I said. pacing my apartment. No legal battles, no unnecessary drama. What are my options? Holloway hummed in thought. Two choices. Press charges for trespassing and theft, or give him a chance to leave voluntarily before we escalate. I already knew Mark wouldn't leave willingly, but I also knew that if he thought he was in control, he'd dig himself into an even deeper hole. Let's give him some rope, I said. Let's see how much he hangs himself with. That evening, I drove to the house that legally belonged to me. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I simply tested the door handle. Locked, as expected. So I rang the doorbell. Nothing. I rang it again. Still nothing. A slow smirk crept onto my lips. Oh, Mark. He was actually pretending he wasn't home. I pulled out my phone and dialed his number. The call rang inside the house. Loud. His obnoxious ringtone echoed through the walls. Finally, he answered. What do you want, Lisa? I leaned against the doorframe. Well, for starters, I want my house back. Mark scoffed. Your house? You mean our house? I laughed, an actual amused laugh. Mark, I don't know how to break this to you, but this house, the one you're currently squatting in, it's legally mine. You're trespassing. He snorted. Yeah, right. Dad wouldn't screw me over like that. Dad didn't screw you over, I shot back. You did that to yourself. You wasted every cent Mom left you. You burned every bridge, you lost his trust. And now, you're playing house in a home that doesn't belong to you. Mark's voice sharpened. You don't deserve it. That's not up to you. My tone was calm. Now, I'm giving you one chance to leave before I bring the law into this. Silence. Then a slow, mocking chuckle. Yeah? And what exactly are you going to do, little sister? Call the cops? You wouldn't. I smiled to myself. You want to bet? The next morning, I woke up early and made a few calls. By noon, I was parked outside the house again. But this time, I wasn't alone. A locksmith's van pulled up beside me. The locksmith stepped out, paperwork in hand. Lisa Walker? That's me. He nodded. Proof of ownership's all here. All right, we'll get started. As they worked, I stood with my arms crossed, watching the front door. Then, exactly 10 minutes later, the moment I had been waiting for arrived. The door flung open. Mark stood there, rage burning in his eyes. What the hell do you think you're doing? I smiled. Changing the locks. His face turned red. You can't just... Oh, but I can. I cut him off, my voice dripping with amusement. I own this house, Mark. You don't. He opened his mouth to argue, but I turned to the locksmith. If he tries to interfere, call the police. Mark's eyes widened slightly, but he masked it with anger. This isn't over. I tilted my head. Oh, it is over. But if you keep pushing, I'll make sure it gets even worse for you. The locksmith finished up, handed me my new keys, and nodded. All set, Miss Walker. Mark stood there fuming. But he had no choice. He stormed off toward his car, slamming the door behind him. I waited. I watched as he drove away. Then I stepped inside, closed the door, and locked it behind me. My house. My rules. Mark had played his game. Now, it was my turn. I knew Mark wouldn't just walk away. Not from the house, not from the inheritance, not from what he thought was owed to him. He wasn't the type to admit defeat. He never had been. That's why I wasn't surprised when a few nights after I changed the locks, my phone buzzed at 3:12 a.m. Motion detected, front entrance. Instantly my heart pounded. I sat up in bed, grabbed my phone, and opened the security app. And there he was. Mark. Dressed in dark clothes, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. But he wasn't alone. Another man stood beside him, whispering something in his ear. Someone I didn't recognize. I knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't just Mark being drunk or desperate. This was a break-in. I gripped my phone and immediately dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I forced my voice to stay calm. My brother is trying to break into my house. He's not alone. I have security cameras. They're at my front door right now. The dispatcher's voice was steady. Are you inside the house? Yes. Doors are locked. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line. I swallowed hard, watching the screen as Mark reached for the door handle. Then suddenly, sirens. Red and blue lights flooded the street. Within seconds, 2 police cars pulled up, officers stepping out, their voices sharp and authoritative. Hands where we can see them. Mark froze. His friend? Gone. The second the lights flashed, the guy bolted into the night, leaving Mark standing there, alone, caught red-handed. 2 officers grabbed him, pressing him against the hood of the police car. He didn't resist. He didn't fight. But his face was a mixture of shock and rage. As they cuffed him, I opened the front door and stepped outside. Our eyes met. His expression twisted. You called the cops on me? I crossed my arms. You broke into my house? What did you expect? One of the officers turned to me. Do you want to press charges, ma'am? I didn't hesitate. Not this time. Yes. Mark's jaw clenched. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Fear. The officer nodded, opened the squad car door, and shoved him inside. The door slammed shut, and just like that, Mark had lost. I barely slept that night. Even though Mark was in police custody, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Because no matter how angry I was, no matter how reckless and selfish he had been, there was one undeniable truth I couldn't ignore. He was my brother, and I didn't know how to save him from himself. The next afternoon my phone rang. Inmate call. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? A pause. Then his voice came through rough and bitter. You happy now? I exhaled. Mark, you broke into my house. His laugh was sharp. Dad's house. I closed my eyes, steadying my tone. Dad's house, which he left to me in his will. A will you knew about. Silence. Then his voice dropped. Yeah, I knew. I knew Dad screwed me over, left you everything like I never existed. I tightened my grip on the phone. He didn't screw you over. He protected you from yourself. Another pause. Then a scoff. Wow, so that's how you see me? As some lost cause? I hesitated. The anger in his voice wasn't just anger. It was pain. I softened. Mark, you stole from Dad, you lied to him, and when he tried to help you, you pushed him away. What was he supposed to do? Silence. Then finally, his voice came through, quieter. I just wanted something that was mine. His words hit me harder than I expected, because beneath all of Mark's rage, all his reckless choices, was a lost boy. A boy who had never fully recovered from losing our mother. A boy who had spiraled so far out of control that he couldn't see a way back. I swallowed. You need help, Mark. His bitter laugh returned. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, I said firmly. It's me, your sister, telling you that I don't want to see you destroy yourself. Mark didn't answer, but he didn't hang up either. The next day, I met with Mr. Holloway. You're considering dropping the charges? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I rubbed my temples. I don't know. Jail isn't going to fix him. Holloway leaned back, studying me. Lisa, I know he's your brother, but at some point you have to ask yourself, is he willing to change? I let out a slow breath. I don't know, but I do know that if he doesn't get help soon, he's going to end up dead. Holloway nodded. There's another option. I looked up. What is it? Rehab, he said simply. You could negotiate a deal, drop the charges, but only if he agrees to treatment. I sat back, my mind racing. Would Mark even consider that? Would he see it as an opportunity, or just another way I was trying to control him? That night I visited him in jail. For the first time, he looked defeated. I sighed. Mark, I'm not here to fight, I'm here to give you a choice. He let out a humorless chuckle. A choice, that's rich. I can press charges, I said. Let the court decide your future. I paused, then choosing my words carefully. Or, you can go to rehab. His expression hardened. No, I exhaled. Then what do you need? Another arrest? Another night in a cell? His jaw clenched. I need my family to stop treating me like I'm broken. My throat tightened. We only treat you that way because you are. For the first time, Mark looked away, and I knew this was his crossroads, his last chance. The only question was, would he take it? Mark sat across from me, the dull hum of the jail's fluorescent lights making the moment feel even heavier. His face was tired, his eyes sunken. For the first time in years, he looked defeated. I sighed, folding my hands on the cold metal table. I'm not here to argue with you, Mark, he scoffed. Then why are you here? I leaned forward. To give you a choice. His expression twisted into something bitter. A choice. That's rich. I ignored the sarcasm. I can press charges. Let the court decide your future. A pause. Then carefully I said, or you can go to rehab. His jaw clenched. No. There it was, the knee-jerk rejection, the instinct to push back against anything that resembled help. I took a slow breath. Mark, you're not walking out of here with nothing. You either face jail time or you go to treatment. That's it. Those are your options. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I don't need rehab. I tilted my head. Then what do you need? Another arrest? Another night in a cell? Another mistake that ruins your life? Silence. For a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw something beneath the anger. Fear. He swallowed hard. I need my family to stop treating me like I'm broken. I bit my lip, choosing my words carefully. We only treat you that way because you are. He flinched. A rare moment of vulnerability cracked through his defenses. I reached into my bag, pulled out a folded pamphlet, and slid it across the table. This is a program. It's good. It won't just help you get clean. It'll help you get your life together. Mark stared at it, unmoving. I sighed. I'm not abandoning you. I never have. But I can't save you, Mark. You have to make the choice. For a long time he didn't speak. Then, slowly, he picked up the pamphlet. 3 days passed. I heard nothing from Mark. I tried to tell myself I didn't care, that I had done everything I could, that this was his choice now. But deep down, I knew I was waiting for the call, waiting to see if he would actually choose a future over his self-destruction. Then, on the 4th day, my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I hesitated before answering. Hello? A pause. Then Mark's voice. I'll do it. For a second I didn't respond, unsure if I had actually heard him right. You'll do what? He let out a slow breath. Rehab. Something inside me loosened, an invisible weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. That's good, Mark, I said softly. That's really good. Don't make a big deal out of it. His voice was gruff, but for once there was no bite behind it. I didn't push. I knew him well enough to not make this moment emotional. So instead, I simply said, I'll make the arrangements. A week later, I drove him to the rehab center myself. Mark sat in the passenger seat, silent for most of the ride. His fingers drummed against his knee, a nervous habit from when we were kids. As we pulled up to the facility, he let out a low whistle. This place is fancy. It was a sprawling center, surrounded by open fields and walking trails. A place meant to feel more like a sanctuary than a prison. It's one of the best, I told him. They don't just focus on addiction. They help with financial recovery, too. They'll help you come up with a plan for when you get out. Mark scoffed. A plan, right? I parked and turned to face him. Mark, this is your shot. I need you to take it seriously. He didn't answer. Instead, he just stared at the entrance, like it was a cage rather than a second chance. Finally, he sighed. I don't know who I am without all the chaos, Lisa. His words caught me off guard. I swallowed. Then maybe it's time to figure that out. For the first time in years, he looked at me, not with anger, not with resentment, but with something that almost resembled regret. Then, without another word, he opened the car door and stepped out. I watched as he walked up the steps. My heart was hammering. Would he stay? Would he run? Would he actually try? I didn't know, but at least now, for the first time in a long time, the decision was his. 3 months passed. For 90 days, I didn't see Mark. I didn't hear his voice, didn't get one of his impulsive, reckless texts, didn't have to brace myself for whatever disaster he had created next. For the first time in years, my life was quiet. But in the back of my mind, the silence felt temporary. Because no matter how much I wanted to believe he was changing, I knew rehab wasn't a cure. It was a choice. And Mark had never been good at making the right ones. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed. Hey, can we talk? I stared at the screen. For months, I had been waiting for this moment, and now that it was here, I didn't know what to expect. Would he sound different? Stronger? More in control? Or would he still be the same Mark, the brother who blamed everyone but himself? I took a deep breath and typed back. Of course. Call me when you're ready. 2 hours passed, then 3. Still no call. I wasn't surprised. 3 months in rehab didn't erase years of bad choices. It didn't erase the betrayals, the anger, or the destruction he had left in his wake. But it was a start, and for once in his life, Mark had actually started. Then, just as I was beginning to wonder if he had changed his mind, my phone rang. I hesitated for only a second before answering. Hey. For a moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end. Then a slow exhale. Hey. His voice was different. Not sharp, not angry. Just tired. I closed my eyes. You're out? Yeah, finished the program yesterday. I leaned back in my chair, gripping the phone a little tighter. How do you feel? A short, dry chuckle. Like I just got out of a damn monastery. I smiled slightly but didn't joke back. Did it help? A pause. Then, softer than I'd ever heard him. Yeah, I think it did. Something inside me eased. Mark never admitted things like that. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he cleared his throat. I wanted to say thanks. I blinked. For what? Another pause. Then, for not giving up on me. I swallowed, pushing past the lump in my throat. I was really close, Mark. I know. His voice was rough but honest. And I don't blame you. For the first time in years, I actually believed him. A few days later, we met in person. I chose a small diner outside the city, neutral territory, a place where neither of us had history. When Mark walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked different. His face wasn't as hollow. His eyes weren't bloodshot. He had gained back some weight, his skin no longer pale and drawn. But more than that, there was something else. Something in his posture, his presence. Clarity. He sat across from me, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly before finally looking up. So what now? I exhaled. That's up to you. He nodded like he already knew that. I need a job. That was true. And that's when I made a decision I hadn't even realized I'd been considering. I set my coffee down. I have one for you. Mark blinked. What? I leaned forward. Dad's house, it's mine, but I don't want to live in it forever. It's too big for me alone. But it needs work. If you're serious about changing, if you're serious about trying, I'll hire you to help me fix it up. Pay you fairly. Give you a place to stay while you get back on your feet. His jaw tensed. You trust me with that? I met his gaze. Not completely. Honesty. It was the only way this would work. But I trust that you want to be better, I continued. And I think Dad would have wanted you to have a chance to earn something. Not take it, not demand it, but earn it. Mark sat there for a long time, just staring at me. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. And for now, that was enough. Months passed. Mark stayed true to his word. At first, we barely spoke, just worked side by side, painting walls, fixing broken tiles, clearing out old memories. But as time went on, something shifted. We started talking, not just about the house, but about everything. About Dad, about Mom, about the things we had lost and the things we still had. One evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Mark spoke quietly. I miss them. His voice was raw, unguarded. I hate that I wasted so much time being angry. I looked over at him. Then don't waste any more. He nodded. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Healing wasn't instant. Forgiveness wasn't easy. But we were trying. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. The smell of fresh paint lingered in the air as I stood in the middle of our father's house. Our house. For months, Mark and I had worked side by side, repairing the cracks in these walls. And, in some strange way, we were repairing ourselves too. It wasn't easy. At first, it was awkward silence. A forced kind of coexistence where neither of us wanted to be the first to speak, But little by little, the walls started coming down. Not just in the house, but between us. One morning, Mark was fixing the kitchen cabinets while I was repainting the baseboards. He glanced at me. "Remember when Mom used to get mad about us slamming these doors?" I smiled. A real one. "Yeah, she used to say if we broke them, we'd have to eat all our meals standing up." Mark chuckled under his breath. "She would have hated what I did to this place." He didn't say it directly, but I knew what he meant. The break-in. The chaos. The destruction he had left behind in his wake. For the first time, he was acknowledging it, owning it, and I realized then, he wasn't just fixing the cabinets, he was fixing himself. A few weeks later, we stood outside, clearing out some old junk from the garage. Mark pulled out a dusty cardboard box, squinting at the faded writing on top. He pried it open, and inside were stacks of old photo albums. Our childhood, frozen in time. Mark swallowed hard. "Wow, I forgot these even existed." I reached for one of the albums, flipping through the pages. There we were, two kids sitting on Dad's lap, laughing like we didn't have a care in the world. I traced my fingers over the photo. "I miss them," I admitted softly. Mark didn't look at me, but I saw his jaw tighten. "Yeah, me too." Silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was just heavy. The weight of everything we had lost. Mark sighed, running a hand over his face. "I hate that I wasted so much time being angry." I turned to him. "Then, don't waste any more." He nodded, but I knew it wasn't that simple. Forgiveness isn't instant, healing isn't easy, but we were trying, and for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Months passed. The house transformed, piece by piece. So did Mark. He didn't just stay clean, he stayed committed. He found a part-time job, started saving money, even talked about getting his own place someday. But what surprised me most? He stopped running from his past. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and found him staring at Dad's old armchair. The same chair our father used to sit in when he'd read the newspaper, sipping his coffee, always giving us his full attention when we talked. Mark's voice was quiet. "I used to think Dad gave up on me." I swallowed hard. "He didn't." Mark nodded slowly. "I know that now." He sat down in the chair, his fingers running over the worn leather. "I just wish I could tell him that." I blinked back, the sting in my eyes. "Maybe you just did." A few days later, Mark approached me with something different in his eyes. Certainty. "Lisa, I think I'm ready." I raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" He exhaled. "To move forward. To stop relying on you for everything. To stand on my own." I studied him for a moment, searching for any sign of doubt, but there wasn't any. For the first time, he actually believed in himself, and so did I. "Then I guess it's time, ni hao," I said with a small smile. We stood in the doorway, looking at everything we had rebuilt together. The house, our relationship, ourselves. Mark let out a breath, his eyes scanning the room one last time. "You know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "if Dad could see us now, I think he'd be proud." I felt my chest tighten. "Yeah, I think he would be too." Mark reached for his bag, slinging it over his shoulder. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what he'd do next. Because this time, he was in control. We stepped outside, and as he turned to go, he paused. "Lisa?" I raised an eyebrow. "Yeah?" A long silence. Then finally, "Thank you. You earned it." And with that, he walked away. Not as the reckless, angry brother I once knew, but as a man finally ready to write his own future.